All right, Lush.
What's going on?
Lush. You're actually on another channel on YouTube. You're on
Yes.
No Jumper, right?
Yes, sir.
How long have you been there?
Been in No Jumper for a little bit, about like 7 months, but recently it's been with a lot more frequency, and I've been added to the main podcast, which has been pretty cool.
Cool.
But I've been on YouTube for several years, hosting rap battles, and as a hip hop artist as well.
Tell me where you grew up.
West side of Los Angeles.
Like the real West Side.
The real West Side. I mean, depends on who you talk to.
That's right.
There's varying definitions of what the West Side is. If you talk to gang members, it's anything west of the 110. I mean, then there's West Side, South Central. If you talk to affluent white people, they think it's everything west of the 405. But I'm, literally the Sawtelle district of West Los Angeles near Palms is where I grew up.
And tell me about your family growing up.
In Baldwin Hills and all that. My family, my dad's a filmmaker. My mom was a producer as well of plays. I'm basically, for as far back as my lineage goes, it's all people in entertainment and activism. Like my parents marched on Washington back in the day and all that. It's kind of crazy because my parents, I have two older brothers. They're 12 and 14 years older than me. So essentially it was like having two uncles, and they both left the house when I was really young. And my parents were like around my age now. They were like 40 when they had me. So I think they kind of expected they already knew how to raise kids. They had it all figured out. This third kid was just going to be easy and a breeze to take care of. And it was kind of what wound up happening was the polar opposite of that.
You finished high school?
I did graduate high school by the grace of God. I wound up getting expelled. Was banned from LAUSD, was expelled from 3 different high schools, and I wound up graduating from a school which was basically like if your parents it was like half special needs, half like if your parents cared enough about your future in education, they will put you here and you're damn near guaranteed a high school diploma. On top of that, I was also sleeping with the secretary. She was like my same age. We were both 18, and she gave me answers to a lot of the finals.
That helps.
Yeah, but I mean, like the graduating class was like 15 kids. It was they allowed us to smoke cigarettes in the front. It's crazy because the school, it was actually in the valley. It was like near the Sherman Oaks Van Nuys border, and now it formerly was a dentist office before I went there. And then when after I graduated, like 15 years later, whatever, it's now like a medical cannabis dispensary. And I was like, that's crazy. They're selling weed there now because I was doing it fucking 15 years ago.
How would you describe your childhood in general?
I come from a loving home. My parents were very attentive, although my dad was gone a lot working. So I spent a lot of time outside and alone and just kind of like intermingling with the kids in the neighborhood and all that. So it was, for the most part, pretty good though.
But you took a different path than the rest of your family.
Very different path. They're all like hyperachievers. My oldest brother, he was a drug addict as well, but he got sober when he was 20 years old. And like the height of his addiction was, he almost got expelled from Princeton. He went to an Ivy League school, and like that was I don't want to undermine his struggles because he definitely went through it, but ever since then his life has been, and even before then, prior to like his 2 or 3 years of getting fucked up, he has just like a pretty charmed existence, and he's very, very successful. My other brother wound up, following in my dad's footsteps and being a filmmaker. And me, like, I'm kind of been a perpetual disappointment in the black sheep of the family.
What do you think that is? Is it genetic? Is it something that you went through?
Well, I suffered a lot of abuse at an early age that I wasn't really aware of until it was identified years later.
By who?
When I was like 5 years old, there was a babysitter, a female babysitter that put hands on me in a sexual way. And there's a couple similar incidents to that. When I was a teenager, I slept with a woman. I was seduced by a woman that was a lot older than me. She was like in her late 30s. I know a lot of people hear that and be like, oh, that's cool. Like, you got laid. What do you mean? But it wasn't like a woman that I would normally ever pursue or choose to sleep with. And she like kind of preyed on me and got me drunk. And, you know, there's several incidents like that. Even there's a little girl that I used to play with, and when I was around that same age, like 4 or 5 years old. And I think she must have been abused as well, because when I would like go over to her house, like she would kind of like, we'd play like games for, you know, there's a whole bunch of things that happened to me. I don't know if that's the sole reason I became an addict, but that definitely is something through therapy that I've identified years later. This is my first time ever actually speaking on it. And it's, you know, something that I'm kind of embarrassed about and feel self-conscious about, but
Yeah, it's something you're out of your control though.
something completely out of my control. But, you know, my dad being gone a lot, me being essentially outside, my mom not being able to control me. When my brothers were raised in the west side of LA in the 70s, it was a much more idyllic time in California, and there wasn't the gang infestation. There wasn't, you know, this is prior to the Ronald Reagan crack cocaine era and all that. And, you know, like it was a much safer place to live. And I was kind of coming of age in a dangerous time in the city during the LA riots and all these extreme racial tension and all this crazy shit. And I was kind of outside, thrust in the midst of it. And my mom wasn't able to get me to come home. I wouldn't listen to her. My dad would come home after being gone for several months and try to like assert some type of authority. I wasn't really trying to hear it. Wound up falling in with a crowd that, you know, was started doing graffiti, and, you know, my little crew became a gang and all that during my early teen years. I got arrested for the first time. I started getting fucked up when I was 12, just smoking and drinking. A lot of kids it was normal for kids my age, where I was from at that time, to be already like sexually active, trying to holler at girls and stuff. I was trying to. Wasn't able to get laid until I was like 14, but I was definitely trying to at that age before I could even like really bust a nut or anything, you know. I got arrested for the first time at 13, drinking 40s in an alley in Westwood behind the In-N-Out. 16, I wound up getting arrested, and this is in 1998, and I got caught for. I was basically trying to tag up a building, but they said vandalism, trespassing, and I had 3 dime bags of weed on me. So they said possession with intent to distribute. Was I going to sell it or smoke it? I mean, it doesn't really matter, like probably both. But at that time, you know, marijuana was far more stigmatized. So they considered that those 3 counts, they'd try to give me a felony. But instead of sending me off to a regular juvenile facility, they sent me to a place called Anacapa by the Sea. If you're between 35 and 45 years old and were an adolescent in Los Angeles and had a lot of severe drug problems, you might know about Anacapa. A lot of people got sent there. It wound up getting shut down by the state of California, but it was a full lockdown juvenile facility, but it had a heavy emphasis on substance abuse and things like that. And that kind of became drug boot camp for me, and I was perpetuated my addiction significantly. In addition to that, I got my first serious girlfriend who was a runaway, who was suicidal. She ran away from her home in Westchester with her boyfriend, and they went all the way up to Seattle. They wound up getting arrested, sent back down to Anacapa, and that's where we met and fell in love. I wouldn't even say we were soulmates. We're more like scar mates, essentially. And she kind of had me flipping my whole script. She was like gothic and shit, so I'm like, damn, I gotta I gotta like enter her world. So I started like, I've always been a hip hop head, but I started listening to like 9 Inch Nails and Skinny Puppy and trying to like, you know, get into more like gothic things and shit to keep her attention. She was really, really beautiful. She wound up being like in the original Suicide Girls book a few years later when she was old enough to, which was, I always thought it was tight. Like my first girlfriend was an OG Suicide Girl. Shortly after then, I wound up getting expelled from high school and then had a series of expulsions. Like the first time I got expelled, I was already on like triple probation. And the only reason they hadn't expelled me yet because my mom was super active in the PTA and things like that. And I got caught doing graffiti on a different school's campus and all this other shit, but they didn't expel me. But I wound up getting, you know, Happy Days, you know, the Fonz's son, he was like a freshman and I was a junior. And there's a lot of Hollywood kids that went to the school I went to at the time. And I thought it would be funny to get him drunk. So I got him drunk for his first time during lunchtime, came back. Kid puked in art class, wound up snitching me out. I get expelled. Went to uni high, wound up getting caught smoking weed, right, basically adjacent to the campus. Got expelled from there. And the rest of my high school was pretty dysfunctional, like all different kinds of crime. Like I was, you know, hitting a lot of licks, even like some car theft, all kinds of crazy shit that I'm lucky to have never really got caught up for. Wound up between the ages of 16 and 19, though, I was in like 10 different treatment centers. When I was 18, I was supposed to, it was like the summer before I'm supposed to go to college, and my dad was making a film overseas. I'd been selling ecstasy before that and popping a lot of ecstasy like on a daily basis. Not like just partying with it. I'd like wake up in the morning and pop an E-pill and shit like that. It was kind of crucial. I was dating this Russian girl over there in West Hollywood. She stayed on in an apartment on Sunset and Poinsettia. And, you know, she was like a big drug dealer. I used to hang out with all the Russians over there. And she was also a prostitute, but I didn't know it at the time because I'm like, was kind of naive and wet behind the ears. And I was like, yeah, when we'd be around other people, she'd be like, you can't tell them that I'm your girlfriend. And I like didn't know that was abnormal. I was just always been so desperate for acceptance and really wanted a relationship so bad. That's all I wanted. That's all I cared about. And it just never seemed to materialize. But that summer, my dad was making a film in a country called Luxembourg. Have you ever heard of Luxembourg before? It's like a historically nameless blip of a nation in between France, Germany, and Holland. And what it is essentially, it's a place where people go to wash their money. It's the whole country's like a bank. And you see like people pull up in limos, hop out with an attaché case, walk into the bank, and I don't know what the fuck they're doing. But my pops was making a movie out there, and I went out to visit him. And when I was out there, I wound up having an overdose on ecstasy. And I was so basically I'd popped some pills the night before, and I'm supposed to meet up with my parents for brunch the following morning. And I went to bed or whatever, woke up, and I was feeling really sick, like abnormal. I'm used to feeling the after effects of being on ecstasy, but this shit felt a lot different, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. But I remember calling my mom, like, we're supposed to meet at like 1 p.m. or like 11, I forget what time. I'd be like, hey mom, like, I'm gonna be a little late. Can we like delay it an hour? She's like, okay, honey. Then like, it's about to be another hour, and I'm like, I'm feeling worse and worse and worse. My heart's leaping out my chest. I don't know what the fuck's going on. I call again, like, mom, I'm gonna need to, can we push it back a little more? I'm still not feeling that good. And she's like, all right, like starting to get a little bit suspicious. They're already like, they don't know what to do with me. I've been terrorizing their existence, you know, for several years at this point, but they're just hoping I go to college. For some reason, they think that if I make it and I survive this period and go away to college, everything will be okay. I don't know why they had that idea in their head. Maybe because they knew I needed to get the fuck out of LA, which was true. But for some reason, they're just like, they can't control me. But Then I'm feeling worse and worse and worse. I call my mom again. It's time to meet up. And she's like, come the fuck down right now. And I remember like, I'm starting to like lose, like there's like spatial distortions. I have no equilibrium. I remember looking at the mirror at myself and really all I could see is my own bloodshot palpitating eyes staring back at myself. Next thing I remember, apparently I made my way to the elevator and passed out, like fainted or whatever in the lobby. I wake up and there's a bunch of people speaking some like crucial foreign language over me, like while they're reviving me essentially or helping. My mom's sitting right there and she's terrified. And my mom is like a really sweet, demure, comforting woman. And no matter what, like she's like this beacon of like positivity essentially. And I remember saying to her, and this sticks with me to this day for numerous reasons, but I remember saying like, Mom, am I gonna die? And instead, of course I expect her to be like, no, honey, you're gonna be fine. Everything's gonna be all right. She looks right back at me and says, I don't know. And that just like, you know, of all the years I've taken off of her life with the dysfunction and pain and anxiety that I've caused, that definitely took a few off of mine. Just that moment, that just sobering reality. I wound up going to a treatment center, a really like high-end treatment center in Arizona. They shipped me off to called the Meadows. And, you know, there's a bunch of drug addicts there, but it's also it's like for all dual diagnosis and multi-addictions, people that have sex addiction or all kinds of stuff were there. And, like basically if there's like a rich person who gets caught cheating on his wife or a doctor that's prescribing themselves fentanyl or some shit, they can go there and try to like salvage their professional life or their marriage essentially. And I was like a kid in a candy store because there's all these like silicone MILFs walking around. I'm essentially like 18-year-old jailbait, right? I'm the youngest dude there. Don't let the fucked up teeth and the chunky exterior fool you. I was a pretty boy at the time. I was real cute. You know, sidebar, shouts to my homeboy Omen. He always said, I'd rather be chunky than a junkie. So we'll get into why I got a little bit of weight on me now. It's probably a good thing to some extent. So I'm at this place and I wind up seeing this. I remember the first day there when like one of the other patients is showing me around and introducing me to all the other people there. And we're going into the laundry room and he's like, oh, that girl that's in there, she's the hottest chick in this entire place. And I saw her, and even though she had like her hair tied back and no makeup on or anything and was like looking downtrodden, and it's like her 5th day in rehab, so she's definitely don't have her weather together. She was essentially, I was like, damn, she is fucking gorgeous. And this is the year 2000, so it's like on the tail end of the Baywatch era, and she's like a blonde, beach-looking, silicone, really hot chick. She's like 7 years older than me, and I was like, heart eye emojis popping out of my skull. I was like, damn, that chick's hot. But I didn't think she would ever talk to me. A few days later, I'm sitting by the pool, and she's like on the other side of the pool. And then you know those scenes in like movies where like the girl waves to the guy and then like the guy looks behind, you're like, who? She can't be talking to me. It's gotta be somebody else. And then you're like, me? And she's like, yeah. And then I was like, that literally happened. And she walks over, we talk for like 3.5 hours straight, wind up making out. Now, keep in mind, for all of you guys that haven't been to treatment centers, the number one most frowned upon thing in any rehab, besides doing drugs, is having any type of sexual interaction or hooking up with anyone. But that's all people are trying to do because, you know, you have drugs, that's your only vice you have to lean on. When that's taken away, what do you have? Like my instinct was just sex. Plus, I'm an 18-year-old hormonal young guy. Like, so, you know, of course, and this hot chick, so I instantly fall in love. I have no serotonin because I've been addicted to ecstasy. They're putting me on all these different drugs to try to get my serotonin levels and my dopamine levels stabilized. In the meantime, though, I have this like secret relationship. We're sneaking around the facility trying to find like the one place where there's no camera so we could like make out and I could like finger her or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, and it was, She was 7 years older than me, and she was one of the original employees of, this is like right after the .com boom. She was one of the original employees of a company called Netscape, which was one of the original web browsers. She started out as like a secretary, made herself indispensable to the company, had crazy stock options, and was apparently worth millions of dollars. So I was like, I hit the fucking jackpot. This super hot chick has all this money. She's foolish enough to like me because, and I'm doing whatever I can to manipulate her into liking me more, writing her poems, lyrics from songs from obscure artists that I hope she doesn't know, and I'm pretending it's my poems that I'm writing to her, and all this shit, doing whatever I can to endear this woman to me. And then when you're in a treatment center like that, they're always trying to recommend an aftercare facility, which is essentially like another rehab center, which is getting a kickback from that rehab center. It's all a fucking racket. It's all a business. And she was recommended to go to this place in New Mexico. And I manipulated the staff and my parents to agree to send me to that same place, obviously without them knowing that she was going to be there. They wind up shipping me out like before her. She wound up going home back to her family for a little while before she went. So I'm like there, and the whole week I'm there, instead of being a G and keeping my fucking mouth shut, because if I had just kept my mouth shut and not said anything and just, pretended to work this program or whatever, because the whole time I didn't care about being sober. I was just killing time till I could get fucked up again. Any treatment center I've ever been to, it was, whether it's because of my parents, because of whatever woman I'm with, or due to the state of California, I never on my own volition wanted to get clean. Ever. And I would do whatever I could to get fucked up in the meantime, in between time, whether it's fucking snorting drywall, making myself pass out. I tried banana peels, toothpaste, if there's drinking Listerine because there's alcohol in it, whatever. Like I wanted to get fucked up. However I could beat a drug test, I would do it. So I'm bragging the whole time she's gone, which before she's there, and I'm bragging to everyone like I got a girlfriend. And I think it was again like this intrinsic need for validation, like I'm important, I'm worthy, I deserve a hot girlfriend, like she really likes me. And unbeknownst to myself, I'm like, it's mainly women that are at this place, and I've become like this toxic force within their like recovery bubble, and I'm just like spreading this negativity and triggering everybody. Finally, she gets there. Within an hour of her being there, they're like, Nick, you're kicked out. You're getting shipped off to another place. Then where they sent me was this place in a small town called Prescott, Arizona, called the Prescott House, which is like a hardcore pound you in the ass recovery. Like they're not fucking playing in the slightest. It's an all male facility. And most of the people there's regular drug addicts, but that's like the vast minority. Most people that are there because they're fighting some type of sentence or as a condition of their sentence, so they don't have to go to prison. And a lot of them are for sex charges. So there's people that are there there's like this old Mormon guy who was there that had molested his granddaughter. There was another dude who had met a 14-year-old girl on the internet and seduced her. And I actually looked this guy up. He's still on the sex offender registry. There's all kinds of like, and I'm in the mix with them, and they have these really strict rules. Like you can't even masturbate. There's rules against masturbating. You're supposed to hold each other accountable, AKA snitch out people for everyone you live with for anything you see that violates their very, very stringent protocol. And I was like, this place is fucking hell. Well, I wind up meeting the only time you could talk to girls. And of course, I'm being labeled as a sex addict when I'm really just an 18-year-old regular kid with a healthy libido. I'm like, bro, I'm just trying to get fucking laid. And like, but I'm a sex addict because was obsessed with this girl and all this crazy shit. When I first got there, I'm like using the payphone to call the payphone at the other spot, trying to talk to her like, you need to get me the fuck out of here. Here's the deal. You got millions of dollars. Let's run off together and live an idyllic existence and mosey off into the sunset. At a certain point, she's like, no, this is harmful for my recovery. stopped taking my calls, left me completely heartbroken and devastated. So I'm like now facing the harsh reality that this is my existence. All I want to do at this point is get back to LA, but I'm stuck in this little podunk town in Arizona. The only place you could talk to women is at the AA meetings, and then it's on a super monitored basis. I wound up meeting a girl there who's in like the female version of the place that I'm at. We wind up running away together. I like take the little bit of money that I have because they give you like an allowance of like $50 a week or some shit. And I wind up saving up for a few weeks. We she has money too. We're like maxing out her cards, all this shit. We're staying in dope fiend motels with monthly rates, wind up meeting people in the little community over there. And we start selling acid, start doing whatever we could to get by and hustling and just trying to make ends meet. I actually had a job for a little while too. I was working at Whataburger, which is not better than In-N-Out for all you Southwestern people. I'm sorry, it's not. But that was like, and this girl that I was in love with was a crazy nymphomaniac to the point where, you know, she had slept with everybody in the fucking town. Like she couldn't, if you left this girl alone for 10 minutes, if I left and there was another guy there, she would suck his dick. It was that crazy. And I was just like miserable, but at the same time, I'm like happy, you know, that at least like I'm able to get high. And, but my existence is really bleak at that point. I wound up getting an upper respiratory infection and I went to a free clinic to go to the doctor and tell the doctor my history, tell him I'm a recovering addict and all that. And this guy, I remember the doctor at the free clinic chuckling to himself. And when he's like, well, if you're a recovering addict, you'll probably like this. He gave me a prescription to codeine with promethazine, cough syrup, thing called bar. It was like a pint-sized bottle, and there was with 4 refills. I essentially spent the next, month or so, couple months, just in a leaned out daze. I had sipped syrup before, growing up. Like I knew about like DJ Screw and 3 6 Mafia and stuff, but this was like the most I had ever been into it like that. And I wind up somehow, some way, my drug counselor that I had that I was seeing back in LA winds up coming, snatching me up and sending me back to the treatment center that I was at before. After that, at that spot, I wound up meeting a girl who was from the Bay Area, from a small town named Alameda outside of Oakland. And we kind of struck up a relationship there. And I wound up moving to the Bay Area at 19 years old. And lived in a series of halfway houses until I finally got my own apartment and really started I was already actively pursuing my dream of becoming a hip hop artist, but that's when when I got my own spot, when it really kicked into high gear. From a young age, I had really, really simple ambitions because I didn't expect to live long. I thought I was gonna die in my early 20s, and I didn't care. I wanted to. I welcomed death because I figured like it would, James Dean, die young, leave a beautiful corpse type thing. And I had no sense of a future. I didn't care or know. And I was so narcissistic that I didn't care who would be the family that loves me, my parents, my brother, my grandmother. I didn't care about the pain it would cause anybody if I was dead. And I was such low self-esteem. I kind of was like, they're better off without me. I'm a huge liability. All I do is break their heart, cost them money, steal from them, whatever, steal anything that's not fucking nailed down. But all I wanted to do was to like rap on a stage and have people say that I was dope. And I wound up achieving that at a super young age. And I was like, so everything after that was essentially a victory lap. And, between the ages of 19 and 38, there was feigned periods of functionality. I had periods of success, but the whole time I'm addicted to drugs. I I was smoking weed every day since I was 12, drinking habitually. Never really got like delirium tremens or like would shake when I didn't drink, but I would feel really agitated when I wouldn't drink. Was addicted to all different kinds of pills, primarily benzodiazepines. That's like Xanax and shit was a big thing for me. I had a huge cocaine phase, a big opiate phase, even a crystal meth phase towards the end of my run. And I think the reason why I wound up living is because it wasn't just one drug the whole time. I would eventually kind of substitute addictions. And, you know, I had gone through everything you pretty much could, from incarceration, divorce, overdosing several times, being evicted from several homes, being stabbed, being shot at, having hits on my life by different gangs and, you know, different criminal organizations, getting kidnapped, getting beat within an inch of my life, being completely demoralized, estranged from my family. None of my friends wanted to let me in any close of a circumference to them. And eventually I just kind of ran out of steam. And I hit bottom so many times, it was like, right when I thought I hit the bottom, like the floorboards would give way, and then I would fall down and hit another bottom. And then I was just like, by this time I'm halfway to the 7th layer of hell. And the place I wound up getting clean and sober at, which was, my sobriety date is February 3rd, 2020. So that's like 2 years, 8 months, and like 15 days sober or something like that. And I guess it's more. I guess it's 17 days. It was a pretty hardcore place, but I thought prior to that, it's listed as a facility for chronic relapsers. And I always defined myself as a chronic relapser. But in reality, like I said earlier, I've never had an earnest attempt at recovery. I never wanted to get clean. I was just killing time in between use, and it was only for periods of a couple weeks at a time. Once I left my last facility at age 19, it's like damn near two decades of uninterrupted use. And I always just thought that, you know, I never fucking relapsed because I never wanted to stop. And this was my first time actually trying to work a program, surrendering and making an earnest attempt at recovery and turning my will and my life over to God. And lo and behold, by the grace of God, I'm still sober. And, you know, shortly before I got clean, about 10 months before that, I was about to be evicted from my third apartment. I'd been divorced. My apartment looked like it got hit by a hurricane. There's just like clothes everywhere. My bed, I couldn't distinguish if it was the dirty mattress was soaked with my own piss or the dog's piss. I had 2 Chihuahuas who I miss very dearly because my ex-wife had them. I have a lot of different dogs that exes have, and sucks because no matter what relationship I'm in, eventually they realize that I'm not a suitable person to have kids with or continue on a relationship with, no matter how much they love me, and they get tired of taking care of me, and the relationship inevitably ends. And at that point, I was pretty much, you know, the crystal meth addiction was going really crazy. I was just out of control, and I wound up texting this girl I knew on Easter of 2019. And I was like, happy Easter. And I put the little star emoji. She texted me back. And for some reason, we wound up talking. And this is like a girl that really woman that has everything together. She has a master's degree, is doing really well in life, is successful, has a whole career as a singer, comes from a good home, is from suburban Pennsylvania and all that. And we wind up falling in love. She moves to LA with me to kind of save my life. And she literally like cleans and organizes my entire life. I'm getting evicted, so she moves us into a new apartment. And all she asks is that I get clean. And I'm lying to her the whole time, saying I'm trying to get clean. Lying to her about the I'm still popping pills. I said they're doctor prescribed, and this is how I'm supposed to get off of the benzos, but they're really not. I'm hiding my crystal meth use, but she's seeing me looking all like, bug-eyed and sweaty, and I'm saying, no, this is just me withdrawing from the benzos. Like, at a certain point, I'm unable to even be intimate with her because I'm rather just masturbate until my dick is sore and about to fall off. Because I'm taking the rent money and spending it on other shit, I wind up getting us evicted again. She moves us back to her family's home out in the East Coast, and so that's where we stayed. But I needed to go back to LA because, in the suburbs out there, it's not like I could go to the corner and find drugs. We're like in a really kind of almost rural area, and I also, I had some loose ends I needed to tie up, but really I needed to get more drugs. So she flies me back to LA, and within a month of me being there, I wind up in this treatment center, which was in Texas. It was a place called BRC, and it wound up saving my life. I was there for 4 months, and then I was in a sober living house for 2 months. Then my fiance and I wound up moving back there and back to the East Coast, and I was back and forth since I got clean between LA and out there. Things started to go really well for me, and I was completely dedicated to the program. I'm going to several AA meetings. It was weird because before I went into treatment, I had heard about this thing called the coronavirus or whatever. I'd heard it mentioned a few times, but when I was in treatment, this global pandemic breaks out, and I'm kind of like oblivious to it because, the spot I was at had no technology. We have no access to phones. We're able to make one phone call a week, monitored by a counselor, and it's only to a person that the counselor chooses. So it's either one of my brothers, my mom, my dad, or my fiance, and it's for 10 minutes and monitored. We have no access to television. The only news source we have is newspapers, and kind of hearing about all this crazy shit that's going on. But it's also kind of like fueling my egocentric drug addict nature. Like, well, I go to treatment and the entire world shuts down. Like, isn't this it's because of me? Like, isn't this great? And then I got out, and it was kind of trippy, but it was a really disconcerting transition to make when I got reemerged into society. I'm kind of grateful that I did it through a sober living house. So it was kind of nice and a little bit more settling and gradual. And, at that time was living a really simple life, and I was genuinely happy for the first time in my life. I remember being at the hotel my fiance was staying at near my sober living house, and just shortly after I'd got out of treatment, and there was $140 on the floor, and I picked it up and I found it. I had completely lost sight of my moral compass, but at this point I actually had it again, and I went to the front desk, excuse me, someone lost this money. And he's like, oh, don't worry about it, just keep it. And I was like, really? But the fact that my instinct was to return it, even right now, if I saw that shit, I'm snatching it up. But at that time, I'm really, God is in my heart. I'm operating at a higher vibration, higher frequency. And I'm just I was just really happy. But then the ambition to get back into the world of entertainment and get my hip hop career popping off again, and my career as a battle rap host and curator. I had all these opportunities starting to come up, and wound up getting my first real, it wasn't my first record deal, but my first real label deal where I have my own label, and with my fiance and her brother, and I'm back in the mix with the battle rap thing. And then slowly but surely, recovery is taking a back seat. The fact of the matter is this: everybody in life has a pyramid of things that are important to them, whether it's, God, their family, relationship, work. There's a pyramid that everybody has. For me, I don't have the luxury of having a regular pyramid. My pyramid has to put my recovery first. If I don't have if the peak of my pyramid isn't recovery, I lose everything else that's important to me. And that's what wind up happening. Things were going great. I was making more money than I had ever made. In my life, I have all this amazing stuff going on. I feel like, my story is an influence and an inspiration to thousands of people. I have all these people that are so proud of me. All the wrongdoings of my past, I did a lot of fucked up shit. I did shit that I can't talk about because it would incriminate myself or others as well, I don't even want to get into it all, but I can't. I'd love to be honest with you, unburden myself and talk about it, but I can't. I really can't. But for the most part, a lot of the things that I had done, I made right. A lot of the people that I had harmed, I made amends to them, and we're chipping away. Like I still owe a lot of money, but like started chipping away at things like that. I had a genuine relationship with my parents, which felt so good, especially because around that time when I was gone in treatment, my mom got diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. So, which is really painful, and it's crazy because that's the same fate that her mother succumbed to. And when her mother had Alzheimer's, my mom took care of her, like really, really in a fanatical way, to the point where she like literally raised millions of dollars and met with President Obama and changed national policy, her and a bunch of other people called the Alzheimer's Association, on how that disease is treated. You know what I mean? And she, her succumbing to that fate, it was really painful, but she has had enough wherewithal and memory to know that I was clean. And that, made me feel so good. Something I want to impress upon all of y'all is that addiction knows no bounds. Addiction doesn't discriminate. Addiction doesn't care about race, class, gender, orientation, socioeconomic status. All of that is irrelevant. Anybody can be stricken with this fate, with this disease. People like to say that it's not disease. People like to look at it as a choice. Well, diabetes is an affliction as well, right? But depending on what you do and how you take care of yourself, that determines the outcome of that. It's the same thing with addiction. If you don't wind up feeding that addiction, you could use it like, it's like a fire hose. And if you direct that fire hose to something productive, you wind up saving burning buildings and could do amazing things in life. If undirected, it's just flailing in all directions, looking like one of those guys, those dolls, what are they called? Those inflatable statues outside of buildings doing advertising, right? And that's kind of like what my addiction was. But, I wound up at a certain point, things started going left, and I had some money issues came up, and I went right back into my old patterns. I didn't relapse. I never used again, but I started with the biggest part of my addiction. The biggest problem I had was honesty. I was been a pathological fucking liar. And as honest as I've been during this conversation, there's moments where it's been difficult because it's like my instinct to just not embellish, but just say, I want to endear people to me, so I want them to have a perception of me that I think is going to make me look better than it really is. When in reality, like, nothing resonates with people more than honesty and being genuine. And even though I know that intrinsically, it's just like against my nature. And lies are a mechanism that's kept me safe in my addiction in the streets, has kept me out of trouble so many times that it's still, something that I struggle with. But it's something that wound up going bad in my relationship again. The lies popped up again. The volatility, the instability, stealing and financial mismanagement, to the point where my fiance, who had been to hell and back with me, thugged it out through all these unimaginable difficulties and unforeseen circumstances, finally decided she had enough and decided that we needed to split up. So we split up, my mother's condition worsens, and I wind up in a really bad situation with my career, with the company that I own, the Battle Rap League, to the point where it put me in serious debt and everything went left and got all fucked up. And here I am in the midst of my sobriety, going on 3 years, and everything was going wrong. And I didn't know what to do, back at my parents' house. And it's crazy because for the first time throughout, I was suicidal again. I felt really bad. They wound up putting me on medication. I don't know if the medication is what's made me not want to kill myself, because I still have really dark days. But at a certain point, and through the success that I've had recently with my podcasting, which has gone to the next level, and I wound up getting like a permanent slot over there, and things are really blowing up. And just like the interaction and the connection, it's really dangerous to let externals dictate your emotions, whether it's praise or criticism. But for some reason, like, that really kept me going. And today, for the first time, I realized I could be happy even if I don't have this woman thought I was gonna spend the rest of my life with. There is a hope for me. I could have a happy life. I could have this new career. And if I just like really dissect all the intricate layers of lies, this web of lies so intricate that fucking Spider-Man would be jealous of it. If I could cut through that and just focus on what's real and what I really want to do. And when I say what's real, not only being real with other people, but being real with myself and following my genuine passion, then I really have a chance of either getting back with her one day, if that's the path, or meeting somebody new and starting a new life and just finding that happiness within. It's not about other people. My instinct is always find validation in others, but I can find it in myself. I can find it with God. And the fact that I stayed sober, clean and sober throughout this whole experience, and here I am now, things are finally starting to turn a corner. If I had been using, and I don't know how to deal with these emotions, because the whole time I was clean, I was with her. So I'm like, she's like almost essentially became my higher power. That's what I was leaning on, and I wasn't even aware of it. And now I'm actually becoming stronger because I don't have drugs to lean on. I don't have financial stability to lean on. I don't have this relationship to lean on. I have to find this strength truly within for the first time in my life. And I can't tell you how gratifying it is. And if I would have relapsed, I might have temporarily taken the pain. But the way I use, I can't just have one drink. I can't just smoke a blunt. By the end of the night, I'm gonna be popping the pills. At best case scenario, I'm gonna wind up methed out in a dope fiend motel, snorting lines off of a hooker's asshole. And that's at best case scenario. At worst, I'm gonna wake up in Men's Central Jail or fucking dead somewhere or in an alley. And that's the reality of my existence. I don't have the luxury of using casually. And if I had, who knows where the fuck I'd be at now. But I stayed clean through this, and things are starting to look up.
What's been most surprising about going through this clean patch for you?
That there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and that it involves a path that I'm choosing for myself that I'm genuinely passionate about. So much of my existence has been based on people pleasing and catering to the emotions of others. And it's not because I'm this altruistic. I mean, I'm a nice guy, right? As fucked up and flawed as I am, I have a good heart. But me being kind to other people and doing for others, it's not because I'm this altruistic person. It's because I want to control their perception of me. I want other people to think that I'm so great. And then maybe one day they'll help me out if I need it. That it's really, I'm giving, but with selfish intentions. And I'm trying not to do that anymore. What's surprising is that I actually can be happy, and I can be happy by myself. That's like the craziest thing.
And the temptation is still there?
To use? Oh, the temptation is definitely always there. I mean, I was telling you the other day, I was taking a walk in my neighborhood and I smelt a coat of fresh white paint, and it instantly reminded me of cocaine. And I have a lot of thoughts of using the thought of using uppers isn't as appealing because I have naturally so much anxiety and I'm so stressed out and like wired up as a person. But the thought of like taking some downers and just sleeping peacefully for a long time, and that sounds amazing. I'm not gonna lie. Even the thought of smoking weed doesn't sound cool to me anymore. Like I think I would be all weird and paranoid, but just taking some pills and just drifting off into a blissful dream state, that sounds really appealing. But at the end of the day, the more I immerse myself in my recovery, the less tempting it is. Like, I'm still around it. The majority of my friends to this day still use. I'm around drugs all the time, around people smoking weed and drinking, when I'm doing the podcast, when I'm hanging out. And am I tempted? Like, the idea of it sounds good, but I'm never like, I want to do this right now, or I wish I could have a hit. I'm just like, it's kind of crazy, but no, I would say that the obsession has been removed, and that definitely can happen. I don't like to say this can happen to you, because I think giving advice is really pretentious. But for me and for millions of other people, the obsession does get removed. Like, I do recoil as if from touching a hot flame from the thought of using.
That's great. All right, Nick, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank
Super
you, I
interesting.
appreciate it.
Wish you great luck from here on out.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
I was raised in an enchanted world. And I don't mean that hyperbolically, I mean that almost literally. My father is a brilliant storyteller. And through his stories, we would learn of matters of faith, matters of fantasy as well. He would entertain his children by telling us these grand tales of the fairies versus the Morlocks. And then my father became very busy around the age of 8, and we didn't hear many stories of that type. Instead, we heard stories of another type, and that of faith, of religion, of all of the histories, doctrines, lores, mythologies of the Mormon faith. See, many families are the varieties within that particular faith that when they're encouraged to have an activity called family home evening, that they'll do that every twice in a while. My family was very religious about that, quite literally religious about it. And then there would be church every Sunday. And then there would often be church on Wednesday when I was a kid as well. So we were engaged in church activities 3 days a week at a minimum. My father, when I was around age 8, started working on a doctorate degree in Middle Near Eastern history, basically the history of the New Testament of the Bible. It was his goal, you see, was to move from a seminary teacher for the Mormon faith, somebody who taught college students, to somebody who was a professor at a university. And the same stories we used to hear with the same verve and dynamism about fairies and their enemies and those preying upon them instead changed to stories within the religion. Stories of the New Testament, stories of the Book of Mormon. Our lives were very structured lives, and yet also with the tinge of fantasy. You see, because my parents were so devoutly religious, we didn't have really a television in the home growing up. When we had a TV that operated, it was very strict what we were allowed to watch, when, and how, which was infrequent at best. So we lived our lives in books. We lived our lives in stories. I'm the middle of 7 children. And for years, we lived in a one-room schoolhouse in a little town called Linden, Utah. That the various owners of that one-room schoolhouse, the first schoolhouse in that particular part of the state, they'd added on a kitchen here and a bathroom there, all lean-tos. And that's where my love of books began. Tolkien, C.S. Lewis. Whereas many families would take trips out of town and out of country, for us, our trips were to the library. It was about a 2.5-mile walk, and we would walk to and from the library and come back with loads of books. And so not only did I have the fantasy and the tales of Tolkien, intermixed with that was the tales of Nephi from the Mormon faith, of Lehi, of Alma, of Laman, and of Lemuel, of all of these other stories. And so because we didn't have television, when I wasn't reading, I was daydreaming and writing. It is a beautiful thing being raised in an enchanted world, because it's a world where good always wins, bad always loses, where good things happen to good people, even after great trial and great travail, and bad things always happen to bad people, again, after great trial and great travail, often inflicted upon their own misdemeanorings, meanderings, and misdeeds. Life, though, has a way of disenchanting us. Through my teenage years, I was not willing to give up on my enchantment, nor was I even into adulthood. That notion that good can do good and make a difference in the world, that enchanted feeling, extended to how I care for, love, and relate to other people. When I was in 5th grade, for example, I was performing weddings amongst my 5th grade peers, as children will, not in the adult sense. That my teachers in 4th and 5th grade called me the gentle giant. One even called me Father Confessor, because the other kids would come up and tell me of their woes, their trials, and I would hug them and comfort them and let them know that everything was going to be all right, because I believed in my bones that it would be. Things change, sometimes slowly, sometimes abruptly. More of that in a moment. For now, I can remember I was 15 and I was on the phone with my friend Anne-Marie. She had lined up her method of self-destruction. She was very suicidal. And so I spent the phone with her for a couple of hours, talking her down and trying to help her find a reason to live. And unbeknownst to me, my father was on the phone upstairs. For you youngins, there was one phone line going into the house. And so whichever phone you picked up in the home, it was all on the same line. So if I was on the phone in one part of the house and Dad was on the phone in the other part of the house, he could overhear my conversations. And my father very respectfully sat and listened, wondering if, I learned this later, wondering if he needed to call an ambulance or something for my dear friend. And then at the end, when she was safe and she had put everything away and went to talk to her mother, my father came downstairs. At this point, it was 2 a.m. in the morning. And of course, when Dad darkened my door, I knew I was in trouble. And much to my surprise, he was tearful. And he said, "There's a job for people like you." He said, "They're called psychologists." And he said, "Son, I think that may be your calling." It was nice to have that moment with my father. You see, my father was so strict when he was younger that my uncles jokingly referred to him as Rabbi Draper, because there was a rule for everything, and everything had a rule, and I was his rebellious son. And for those of you who know my father today, you encounter him as a very kind and sweet man, and he is. But back then, Dad and I could fight. And so for him to stop by and to prop me up like that and to thank me for loving Anne-Marie the way I did and set me on a career path. So here I am with this grand imagination informed by Mormon stories as well as Tolkien and Lewis and all of these others. I set out on my grand quest to be a psychologist, whereas many of my friends changed their major. Again and again, I went straight through knowing this is how I was going to wage war against the forces of evil, where good does good and evil suffers and is destroyed, and I was going to be the noble paladin who would be a part of that. When I was 17, just an eye blink away from that conversation with Anne-Marie, one day, we were building sets for a dance recital at the high school. And I was the big brawny one that would carry things up from downstairs and help maneuver things. And I did not yet have the aesthetic eye that I gained later. And so I was trusted to do the heavy lifting, And a bunch of us, after we had finished building the sets, we were going to go to Village Inn and get ourselves some huevos rancheros. And so we got in this little Datsun Corolla. For those of you who are my age or older, you remember that Corollas used to be made by Datsun. So imagine guys my size all packed into this little Datsun. And we went tearing down this long parking lot called the drag strip at our high school. And about halfway down, Jake, the driver, suddenly yells out, "There's Merm!" Grabs the emergency brake, much to the distress of the young man, Ryan, sitting on the emergency brake, because there were 6 of us in that tiny car, pulls the emergency brake and does a military turn, squealing those car tires around. And standing right outside on the sidewalk was a vision of 1980s loveliness. Goodness gracious, I'll never forget her. 6 foot tall, sun-bleached light brown hair going down just beyond her shoulder. She had a barrette holding her hair back. She was in a tight pink sweater with 3 little wooden buttons, acid wash jeans. For those of you that remember what those were, in bright white LA Gear high tops, and glorious brown eyes. I had written some years later to her, I said, "Your eyes are the love I fell into, infinitely deep, and I will fall forever until those eyes close and my eternity ends." I'm so grateful for that meeting. Now, I would like to say that it was love at first sight. Well, it was for me, not for her. And so we've got these 6 men puppy-dogging around this 6 young men, we're all teenagers, puppy-dogging around this teenage girl, and she was not having it. And don't get me wrong, I put on my smooth, I put on the charm, I put on the humor, everything I could do to keep her attention, and I failed to. She rebuffed my advances very gently and with a determined stride made her way into the high school. Now, one of the things that's nice about having an ego that's a little bit above average in size is that you're used to putting yourself out there and used to getting rebuffed, and so I didn't think anything of it. I found out later she was actually battling the flu, and that's why she was so anxious to get away from us, and that she had a biology exam for a college extension course she was taking in the high school. But soon we met again, friends of a friend, and we've been together ever since. 33 years married, 35 years that we have known each other. And at times, I regret the hell that she's had to go through with me. And then I remember, if you're going to walk 666 miles of hell, it's better to do so with a companion, even if they don't deserve to be there. Some of those stories we may tell in different formats, in different ways, but for now. Through college, through graduate school, I was going to be a psychologist, still trying to figure out a way that I could practice this Mormon faith that I was raised in authentically. A couple months into graduate school, see, my sweetheart and I had a deal that we would both work full-time, go to school full-time, get our undergraduate degrees done. And then when I was off to graduate school, she would work full-time and put me through graduate school. That was the arrangement. And 3 months into graduate school, she informs me that it is time for her to have a baby. You see, in Mormon culture, we talk about gifts of the Spirit, and hers, in this particular cultural tradition, is the gift of prophecy. Anytime Miriam says, "I have a feeling," please put on all brakes, stop what you're doing. This is my sweetheart's name, is Miriam. And listen, because something profound is going to come, and you may or may not like it, but it's going to be true and truthful. And she said she had a feeling it was time for her to start having children. And I kept thinking, well, how are you going to work full-time and go to school full-time, put me through school, if you have children? And she looked at me, she said, "I'm not going to be working." We spent 3 hours in the car talking about this, half arguing, half discussing. I was near panicking. How in the world am I going to do this? Working full-time, going to school full-time, especially in the doctoral program I was going to. We were forbidden from working. And she had a feeling. After one miscarriage, and we had called all the family when she first got pregnant, and that miscarriage was very devastating. But a little while later, she was pregnant with my oldest son. See, the children that I named, all of them have names that are uncommon. Jotham, my oldest, taken from the book of 2 Kings. There was one of these myths, these stories that I was raised on, is that there was a king called Uzziah. Now, whether or not this story is biblically accurate, I don't know. I will not make a claim to that. But this is the story I was told as a child, and it stuck with me. That King Uzziah had a son who was illegitimate and therefore could not ascend to the throne. And Uzziah used this son quite a bit to hire mercenaries and to lead Uzziah's various armies. And so Uzziah's son became very angry and wanted the throne to himself, and so overthrew the court. And so Jotham, being just a little boy in this particular story, goes in and sees his older half-brother slaughtering everyone, and he flees and runs out into the desert. And while he's out in the desert, the Spirit of the Lord appears to him and says, "You are to return to that court and to tell everyone within the sound of your voice that they will burn as a reed in the desert." And so this terrified little boy, some tales say he was 8, some tales say he was 10, he comes back into the royal court and with his plaintive, thin, terrified boy voice goes, "You will burn like a reed in the desert," and then runs like mad out before these soldiers can kill him. And I remember hearing that story as a child and going, Jotham is an amazing name. Somebody who is that brave and yet has the common sense to run. That is a name I will remember. And so that's the name given to my eldest, Jotham. My middle child is named Diamlin. Diamlin, the diamond one, the diamond princess. Joseph Conrad wrote a novella called The Lagoon, and I did not like that story, but I really liked the name Diamlin, so I kept that one. And then Jareth, my youngest. We learned later that was the name of the Goblin King in a movie called The Labyrinth. I'll take it. And that's his gamer handle to this day, is Goblin King. We'll focus this story more on Jotham. Jotham came into the world contemplatively. That's the best way I can think. So Diamlin came into the world talking, and Jareth launched into the world, spoiling the poor OBGYN's shoes. He came into the world so enthusiastically. Amniotic fluids splashed everywhere. But Jotham came into the world thoughtfully. I'll never forget holding him when he opened his eyes for the first time. They were bright blue, little shock of brown hair on his tiny little head. And we made eye contact. I come from a culture where fatherhood is presumed, so much so there's a lot of it that they don't talk about. They don't talk about the profundity, just how profound it is to hold your child for the first time. There's a philosopher I quite like named Jean-Luc Marion. He talks about the event, he and his student Claude Romano. And these are the moments in your life where your world changes. It's not that you change, it's that the world changes. Your being in the world changes. It shifts. There's no going back at that point. And that's when my world shifted. I was now father. How does one do this? Years, tradition, centuries, and yet we can't write a book on it. We can't write a manual on it. There are various ideas that are helpful in various literature that's been published, various stories from father, from uncles, from grandfathers. And yet oftentimes you are left figuring it out for yourself, hopefully with the love and comfort of others. But holy cow, we were off on our own, states away from where we were raised. And now I'm a father. And Jotham was a remarkable baby, a remarkable person. He grew into boyhood immediately. I don't know how else to describe it. He skipped the baby phase. There's a picture, for example, we still have of Jotham is just, he should be a toddler, perched on my wife's hip, and she's looking at the camera with this very tall boy on her hip. But he was supposed to be a toddler, but he wasn't roly-poly or chubby. He skipped all of that and went straight to boy. Tall and thin, often the tallest in his class. I noticed, as a doctoral student studying development and human development, infant development, that I noticed Jotham was not developing in the stereotypified ways that are reported as normal in the textbooks. Instead, he was developing atypically, very precocious in some areas, and delayed, or some abilities were even absent. And so I fought against the diagnosis because he didn't clearly meet criteria for autism at the time. In fact, one of the things I've learned in studying autism is nobody really does. I fought that diagnosis for a while until Miriam, of course, my beloved, she goes and she finds all the resources that can be brought to bear for children with that particular label, and that's what convinced me to accept the label at least. But even then, Jotham's testing scores were greatly atypical. It's like his WIPSI score, the Weschler preschool, it's the little baby IQ test. His scores were all over the place. They were very